We start again.
Yeah.
And I do get confirmation now that we are running now. So sorry about the trouble.
Welcome.
Welcome to MusicLab, Volume 6.
Yes.
And my name is Alexander Jensenius. I'm a professor of music technology here at the University of Oslo. Here we have
Solveig Sørbø from the Science Library, and together we have started MusicLab.
And this is the 6th edition of MusicLab, and we have been working on developing this concept as a way of thinking about how we can do open research. And one of the ideas here is that we, as researchers, we try to take our lab into the real world and try to see how it's possible to do music research in a real environment. Of course, nothing is really real these days with Corona, but anyways. And the idea is that we are seeing how we can run a performance, capture various types of things during the performance, or both the performers and the audiences, and then afterwards also be able to analyze these data. And then we also have a panel discussion where we will talk a little bit about what's going on. So it's really about kind of opening the black box of what research is, in addition to giving you also a very nice musical experience.
And it's real research. I mean, there are actual scientific outputs coming from this, which means that it's really, really great if you want to participate later on and help with that. I also wanted to say that in a regular music lab there will be beer drinking and fun and hugging and everything, but we hope that from your homes, from wherever you are around the world, you will still feel connected to all the others who are watching the stream with you. And so this time, this music lab is about human and machine interaction, and Çağrı Erdem, who is a PhD student here at Ritmo, has designed an incredible artificial intelligence that is called CAVI, and it's called CAVI because it adapts to the human and the human adapts to the CAVI, so it's a co-adaptive audiovisual instrument. And you will get to experience CAVI along with some real flesh and blood musicians very soon. And it's going to be a little bit like if you were playing an instrument and then you had a friend control the effects for you. The CAVI kind of works that way. It generates sound from the sound that you give it. And then it's supposed to feel like you're improvising together because you're actually improvising together, even though it's an artificial intelligence instead of human being. So we invite you to give feedback real time on how you feel, like who's in charge, who is playing. Do you feel like the human is playing, or do you feel like the instrument is playing? I mean the artificial intelligence is playing, or do you feel like it's a mix? So if you open the link that is in the description, you will get to this place where you can give real-time feedback and with a slider. So that would be really, really helpful.
And it's completely anonymous as well.
I forgot to say that. Yeah, it's anonymous. It's not dangerous.
Yeah.
It will just be if you wanted to help. If you don't want to do that, you can also just lean back and enjoy the show. So the musicians that we have today are Dag Erik Knedal Andersen and Christian Winther. And Dag Erik, I'm going to read their introductions because I think they deserve a good introduction. So Dag Erik Knedal Andersen is a dazzling musician bringing jazz fluidity, speed and precision to a wide variety of playing situations, mostly in the field of free improvisation and noise. He combines flamboyance, a hyperactive personality, and instinctive creativity to place him among the finest European drummers. And Christian Winther is an exploratory guitarist and songwriter, this year upcoming with both a debut solo album, The Clearing, and his commissioned piece Urfuglen for the Motvind Festival on Nasjonal Jazzscene. Based in Oslo, he is known either through the experimental trios Monkey Plot and Ich bin Nintendo, the jazz collective Torg, and the alternative pop duo Listen to Girl. And later on, we will also have a panel discussion with Stefania Serafin, Nanette Nilsen, and Anna Chambaud, in addition to the musician. It will be moderated by you, Alexander.
And to round off this fantastic evening, we're going to have data jockeying with Dongo Kwak, who will do some live analysis of the data captured during the performance. So that's quite a lot, but it's going to be great fun. Now I think it's just time to lean back really and enjoy the performance.
Thank you so much to Christian Winther. And okay, this is the ritmo logo. Yeah. So thank you to Christian Winther on guitar and Dag Erik Knedal Andersen on drums, and also to CAVI, the artificial intelligence. It's a co-adaptive audiovisual instrument, and it was designed by Çağrı Erdem with contributions from Katja Schia, so it's like their minds had a baby. Anyway, I'll just give you a few minutes to fill out the feedback form. So if you have been giving your continuous feedback, that's great. Then you can copy your participant ID and proceed to this little, it's called like a net schema. It's a short questionnaire that we'd love if you can fill out. It just takes a few minutes. So I'm going to leave you with that for a couple of minutes, after which there will be a panel discussion with Anna Chambaud, Stefania Serafin, and Nanette Nilsen, moderated by Alexander Jensenius, and also featuring the musicians. So then you will get to know how the musicians felt when playing with CAVI. So just a couple of minutes, and then we'll be back.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
Just
everyone.
Just filling in the thing.
You filling in the questionnaires? Yes. We'll let everyone do half a minute more of filling in questionnaires, and then we'll start with the panel discussion.
Something.
Better to close it.
I can even zoom myself here. Okay, I think we'll try to start the panel here. I would like to start by thanking the performers, first of all, Christian Winther and Dag Erik Knedal Andersen, for the very, very nice performances that they just did with CAVI, and we'll talk about that shortly. Also, we have Stefania Serafin with us here today. She's a professor of sound and music computing from Aalborg University, Copenhagen. And we have Anna Chambaud here, who's an associate professor of music technology from the Montfort University in the UK. And we have Nanette Nilsen, who's an associate professor of music and philosophy, amongst others, here at the University of Oslo. And together we're going to have a little bit of a kind of a panel discussion, what you could call edutainment in a way here. And also, in addition to some questions that I have for the panel and the conversation that we can have between us, we can also take some questions from the chat. So I have Solveig here is watching the YouTube chat. So if you do have any questions for the panel, feel free to add them to the chat, and we'll get back to them. But let's start on the musical side of things. So Christian, I had a question for you. After playing with CAVI, this wonderful creature, or if you can call it like that, how did it feel? Can we start with an open question like that?
Sure. It felt very different watching it now than I experienced while playing. So that was really fun to watch. It was definitely more controlling and stubborn, I think, now. That has probably a lot to do with the sound and monitoring. Yeah, we had our moments, I think. Maybe the beginning and the end, perhaps. I think it works best when I think of it as an effect, sort of a randomizer, layered stuff. As an improviser, it's weird. I don't know, sometimes it feels like the drummer at the wrong gig. Have you seen the YouTube video? It probably, I don't know, we speak different languages, and I think it worked better when watching Dag Erik. The sounds they were making together were more out of this galaxy, and I think it sort of fits better in that world. Yeah, it was a very interesting experience.
Could I also ask you about because we could also see the visuals, right? This kind of creature eye thing, which was there. Did you look at that during the performance, or was that part of it?
No, I didn't.
No.
In the same way, I usually don't look at my other improvising friends while playing with them.
Great. Okay, let's move on. Dag. Then kind of thinking about CAVI as a musician in a way, or did it feel like a musician that you played with, or could you elaborate a little on your experience with playing with CAVI?
Yeah. First of all, I would say that it's symptomatic for these times that we live in. That the first gig of the year on my part is with an IA, because yeah, it's nice, but it feels a bit different somehow from playing with a musician. Or how should I put this? In some sort, I've given it 4 goes now, playing with CAVI, and the first time we played together, it was, yeah, it felt really great. Sort of, we had the interaction, and we were able to sort of go different places and try a lot of exciting sort of soundscapes together. Whereas in the second, third, and fourth go with it, it felt a bit more as a restriction, sort of. You weren't able to communicate as much with it as you preferably want to when playing improvised music with someone. But that being said, it was a very different experience now as well, listening to the whole thing back compared to what it felt like playing with it, in the sense of the room and the whole atmosphere with the whole thing. And the balance, of course, was very different in the mix here as well. But yeah, it feels in a weird way like a musician. I have to admit it. It's very interesting, for sure, to play with.
Great. So one of the things that we are working on here at the University of Oslo, when it comes to kind of the idea of playing music with artificial intelligence in different ways, is a concept of agency, and in a way kind of a musical agency, and to what extent it's possible to think of machines having agency. So I thought I should ask our philosopher then about agency, and Nanette, could you help us a little bit? What is agency? What do you think about it?
Okay, thank you. Agency is tricky, but we can give it a try. As a concept, agency implies action, right? That there's a mover, doer, a shaker, maker within some environment. It's some agent who acts, interacts with, responds to, and has an influence on the course of events. So there's action with some kind of effect. I think it's important to note also, now that I've heard Dag Erik and Kristen speak the way that you have, it's really interesting. It's already opening up this idea that agency may imply a person or a self, but actually it's important to note that it does not necessarily imply a person or a self. So it doesn't necessarily imply, as a concept, a human agent. It can be a machine agent. So enter the matrix. Think of Agent Smith. Agent Smith has human-like qualities, but he's not a human. Okay, so that was agency. If I can then talk a bit about musical agency as well, because it doesn't become any less complex from introducing the idea of musical agency. What is a musical agent? Framed simply, a musical agent would participate musically in music making. So the making, the doing, the shaking, the moving, and have the ability to interact with this music making environment. So in the CAVI framework, in this AI environment, musical agency becomes even more complex than it already was, because it is not always clear, as we know very well now, to us, the listener, who makes the sound, when and why and how. So agency becomes a bit fluid in this environment. And just to add to the complexity, I could say that actually in this musical environment, as we experience it, the term musical agent extends to the listener. So we're all musical agents as well as we experience the music. So if I should just add finally that maybe a key criterion, if we can put it like this, and this is up for, we can touch upon this again, but a key criterion for musical agency, I would suggest, is that there is an ability to respond to musical cues. And then whether or not that response is successful or not, it's then up for discussion. I could go on, but I should probably leave it there.
Great, thanks, Danette. Yeah, we can get back to many of these topics later, but just moving on to Anna, who's also working with AI herself in both musical practice and also in more scientific activities. And Anna, if you were to kind of try to summarize a little bit about what's kind of the current state of AI and music these days, so kind of machine creativity, what's going on? I mean, and if you could try to explain that to kind of the public here.
Yeah, well, I can try to briefly summarize. I can say that it's a very prolific moment where the tools are accessible and you can find research in academia, in industry, but also independent artists. And so there is lots going on. Also, thanks to the machine learning and deep learning, you can find different projects, ranging from Google Magenta, but also for the NIME community, we have Wikinator and other frameworks so that we can train our models. So there is lots going on. But then connecting to this agency and thinking on the music performance, there are different dimensions, but perhaps two to highlight. One is, yes, agency. The other can be interactivity. And so you can find models in real time that react in real time, as we've seen with CAVI, but also you can find examples offline. So they have been trained offline, and then the model or the agent just behaves, but there is this lack of mutual interaction. So examples would be these musical albums, such as there's the Hello World by François Pachet, for example, with flow machines. So that's an album already created from an Asian, or also we have at the moment for Craig Beer, where also you can go and see on stage an agent just performing. So these two dimensions, I think they are important. There are more, but for music performance, they are relevant here. And just to conclude also, like this continuum of agency you can find from human-like creativity, but also another level would be more the aided agent that helps the human. And so there is this continuum, and you can find different projects at different ranges. Yeah.
Great. And then finally, Stefania, a question for you, kind of broadening the scope, perhaps even larger, to think of music technology at large. And I guess one reason I wanted to ask you this question is that you're also leading the Nordic Sound and Music Computing Network, and this event we have here today is actually at the end of a day of Nordic Sound and Music Computing activities, within our network. So Stefano, what are kind of, if you think about music technology at large, or sound and music computing also that you represent, what are some of the kind of the possibilities of this in the world as we move forwards now and in the musicking world?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to congratulate the musicians and the whole performance, because it was really enjoyable. And I mean, this is one of the possibilities that music technology or technology in general offers. So to be able to listen to music, enjoy music, almost if we were present. So technologies and music technologies in general is allowing, I mean, everything now is quite open, inclusive, and accessible to everyone. So I think this is one of the beauties of our field, that everybody can be part of making music, or enjoying music, or participating to music, or making musical instruments. I mean, now it's really like everybody, pretty much everybody, let's say. But this is one of the beauties of our field, that technologies and music are very blended together, and they can really make us feel a bit more connected.
Great. Let's open up a little and try to talk about perhaps AI then in the context of music. And last year, at least here in Norway, we had some media discussions about whether AI is bad or good, which is a bit it's a kind of a way also of kind of framing this as using technology in music is a problem. Is that so? And perhaps this question goes perhaps to the musicians first, in terms of how do you think about technology, and in this particular case we're talking about now more AI in music. Do you see that this is a big problem, or do you see it as a possibility?
Yeah, I can start. No, I think it's a great idea to in a musical setting to have a machine make me go in more unpredictable ways, make me play different. I think that's a great possibility, and I don't know if regardless of if this was successful or not, it's a great idea with plenty of possibilities, I think.
I agree. This technology is something that you really need to embrace, I think, because the potential of the whole thing is endless. When it comes to creativity on how to discover new music or new directions within your own playing, in the interaction with the AI, it's really interesting.
So you're not afraid of kind of the machines coming in and stealing the jobs of musicians and kind of taking over for composers, etc.?
That might be a side of the whole thing. Of course, I did some research and found some. There's a AI that made a new Nirvana song, I think, "Drown in the Sun" or something, and it sounds almost exactly the same as Nirvana did. The sound is very similar, and it's it's a really interesting piece. I think it would be a bit the same as with the internet. It's something we have to adapt, and then we have to learn how to use it as a tool. It's a natural progression of things, and I think the positive sides and the potential in the whole thing is huge. So yeah. But of course, there are some negative sides when it comes to sort of royalties for composers and that side of it, which is can be problematic, I think.
It was interesting what you said with Nirvana. It could remind us of making new music instead of old music, because the machines are very good at making what has already been made, sort of. So it could sort of stretch our ideas into thinking further, I think, just looking at the positive sides.
But then back to kind of this idea also then changing the role of what is a musician, what is a composer, and also, again, now I'm looking at Anna here virtually because I know Anna is also doing coding, live coding, for example, and really something really in between kind of building an instrument on the fly and performing and composing and everything together. How are we talking about a kind of complete dissolvement of the traditional roles of being kind of musician and composer as we move forward, or what do you think?
Well, certainly you're exploring new avenues or new roles, but yeah, there is the musician, like for the live coding, the role keeps the same, but you can see it as you're collaborating with another, with an agent, but it's a collaborator who helps you making decisions, and so improving the performance and also exploring new music or sonic spaces as well throughout this exploration. But I can see for now the positive side of it. Yes, improving. So the excuse is to improve the collaboration, and also for live coding, decisions need to be taken fast somehow. So that can be an enhancement if you have a co-creator with you. So also should improve the live coding practice, which is in real time, improvising. So getting speed up sometimes is also good. Yeah.
So to follow up on that line then, because you talk about also the speed and also performance is also about something about interacting in the moment in a way. So to what extent are you thinking then about the latency or the delay in terms of kind of what you're doing and what you get back from another human machine or a human performer or a machine performer? To what extent does this matter? What's kind of the necessary level of kind of temporal precision, if you like? Not sure if anyone wants to dare talk and mention something about that.
But I guess this connects with immediacy, and you expect some certain immediacy in a real-time performance. So you would expect from an agent to react within like small latency in that sense. So I would expect that with a like an autonomous system that reacts from what is happening in the environment. So that would be an expectation in music performance.
We'll soon look at the questions from the chat, but just a couple of more questions for me first, following up on this idea of kind of the immediacy. And I know, Stefania, you have been working with a concept called physical modeling, which is a way kind of where we try to kind of create a very immediate kind of connection between what the performer is doing and also the sound that's coming there. Is that the kind of an approach where we can really get closer to that kind of intimacy you could talk about in designing this type of instrumental practices?
Yes, I would like to say actually something about this real-time interaction first, but something that I'm really missing, and not because of, so my daughter, she sings in a choir, and what is really missing is this choir experience of singing all together. Because, I mean, we can create the real-time improvisation with like sharing, like I play first and then you play, like it was a wonderful example what we experience now in YouTube. That is sort of real-time, but this collective experience of singing all together, I think this is what we are really missing now in these days. And also about, sorry, I'm not answering your question about physical models, but also what I wanted to say about this AI, if it is evil. I mean, I don't think it's evil the way we use it, because we use it for our good. I mean, again, this performance really showed that we can do very, very interesting interaction with AI, but other people are using it in an evil way. And so it's, I mean, not, we are not, for us, it's a good tool that we can use to make very interesting connection between human and machine. And about physical models, yes, but again, I mean, physical models are a good tool, but I mean, they're not, they don't solve these issues of synchronicity in singing together and really feeling like together. So we can have some tricks with playing like sharing experiences and so on, but these collective experiences of being physical in the place, this is, I think, is never going to be possible with technologies, unfortunately.
I have one question I need to ask Nanette before we turn to the chat. And Nanette has been working on music and ethics, also aesthetics, actually. So, Nanette, any ethical considerations also that we need to think about when we're dealing with AI in music?
We don't need to, but we can. So there are no real shoulds, nots here. But if we were to think about the possibilities here, I think that it would very much depend on the context and how you manage expectations. And I think the managing of expectations is absolutely crucial. So if you think about perhaps introducing this AI or this kind of systematic AI into a music therapy context, because you use improvisation a lot in music therapy, then there might be some ethical consequences to consider, right? So you could say that some of the musical agents are vulnerable, and then they would need a particular kind of care that a maybe randomized AI system wouldn't be able to provide necessarily. So that's one thing. The other thing would be to think about the concept of agency in connection with a more sort of sociological approach, which would, sociologists, they would hold that agency implies a sort of certain level of individual freedom, that individuals could be free or would be free to make their own choices and then act independently. And so freedom could be an ethical issue to discuss in an AI context. So you might argue that the freedom otherwise experienced by the performers when they improvise is somehow hindered or eradicated. And that would be because AI is involved, and so there's some kind of a predetermined structure which is privileged. You could turn it around again if you want to, and start thinking about the sort of liberation, actually knowing that what you are playing with. So that's a third option for the ethics. That as a musician, if you are in this environment where you can play without listening, you can play, you can improvise without actually worrying about whether that musician over there is going to find you rude, or that you're not listening or not entering in a proper dialogue as a musician. So you can use it maybe as a kind of self-exploratory environment within which you can develop as a musician without having to worry about ethical consequences of what you're actually doing, because there's no such thing as empathy in CAVI, whether we would like it or not. I did notice that that the idea that something is controlling or stubborn, that it's almost inevitable that you are feeling in a that there's a human element in that kind of musical interaction, because why wouldn't it feel like music? Yeah.
Great, thanks. Now I'm turning to Solveig here to see if are there any things that we should pick up on from the chat?
Yes, there are, in fact. I don't know if people can hear me.
Well, you shout, okay. Or I can repeat.
Yeah, I will speak. I want to. There have been 3 comments so far, or there have been many comments, but people are saying it's a great discussion. And then I want to say one funny thing, which is not really a question, but Ruby Topping is saying that I felt like CAVI was a slightly annoying beginner improv partner who has great ideas but can't sense when it's time to come in and when it's time to step back. So yeah,
that's a great comment. Perhaps something to comment on from you. Did you hear the question? That CAVI is kind of like a beginner improviser. Was that how you felt?
Definitely. I actually even wrote it down when I heard my performance with it. Some beginner improvisers, they usually throw all their tricks at you. And it sort of felt like that, yeah. So that was a very good observation.
Yeah, I think that Çağrı is probably still going to develop it even more. So it is true that it's kind of it's a baby, okay?
AI baby.
Yeah, and now we have a question from Kristin Nordervall, and she's saying, this is a question for the musicians. Does the agency of the AI CAVI increase your own agency, or does it compete with your agency?
Did you get the question? Should I repeat? Yeah. So the question is from Christian Jam. Does the agency of the AI CAVI increase your own agency, or does it compete with your agency?
If you let go of your ego, it can go both ways. It definitely competed for me personally, aesthetically, because I would never play that kind of music. But that's good.
So you actually felt that CAVI kind of steered the complete set and kind of was in control of the musical sound, structure, performance?
I mean, I think as an improviser, it's important to sort of do your own thing and not always listen to what the other person is doing. So, and I guess I play sort of myself anyways. Maybe that's selfish, but I think that's very normal. So I don't think it steered what I was doing. I was playing myself, but for sure the rhythms, the attack and release was very controlled by CAVI, and I had to adapt for sure.
There's one more question, or there's one more answer first. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I felt quite a bit like the same as Christian, that you tend to get try to figure out how to play with this thing because you don't know what you can expect. You know that it processes through your sound and that it will come with the feedback, but the whole thing about like things that I felt were quite off was things such as timing, you know, and general form. It was quite difficult to work with. So yeah.
Great.
Okay, and then Ruby Topping is asking.
Should I read it?
Yeah, you can do that.
Which one?
This one.
This one. Okay, so this is a question from Ruby Topping. I think it was mentioned that CAVI was AI based. Does it adapt and change across performances? What was it trained on? Well, I guess that's perhaps more a question to Çağrı than to the panel, but perhaps you can answer something about how it felt like.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, so I guess a short version would be how it felt like it changed between performances. I guess now you mainly trained with it and tested it just a few times before the actual performance, but how different was it from time to time?
It changed quite a bit depending on the input of the whole thing. But also, I was given the opportunity to edit some of the inputs into the AI, and that really changed the whole thing, how it interacted as such, because it felt like it was a bit more going into a loop, and I set these sort of parameters for the whole thing. So it changed quite a bit, and also. The practice sessions I did with a bit less drum kits. I had a snare drum and did like lots of preparations, but I had some more sort of textures when it came to the performance itself, and that sort of changed the whole thing quite a lot because it's very dependent on the inputs. And the level of input you give into it, because we had some troubles, you know, with the microphones, and it sort of felt like there was a technical issue with the whole thing, getting enough input into it, and then you reach a certain threshold, and then it explodes, sort of. But yeah, it's interesting.
But yeah. Also, Çağrı will be able to explain more when he releases his research about it, and he's also going to publish the whole instrument so that people can get access to it in due time. Not now.
Cool. I think we are almost running out of time, but are we? Is there one more question from the chat? Or?
Yes, just one more question that just popped in from Andy Lowe.
Yeah. When I improvise with others, I look out for the moments where it just feels like things fall into place or something significant just happened. Did you experience any of these moments?
No.
Yeah.
You're allowed to say no, that's fine.
It's research. It's research. So.
I think I had sort of, when I first started playing with it, it was like, wow, this is amazing. But then again, the whole thing with COVID and everything has meant that you haven't played with anybody at all for quite a long time. So it was just exciting to be playing again, I guess. But the first time I played with it, I sort of felt like, wow, this is really nice. And then, my excitement got a bit, less when we did a couple of more pieces with it. So yeah, but I can see the potential in it somehow. But at the moment, it felt a bit more. We talked about this, Christian, that it feels a bit more like an effect board, like an effect panel that just sort of uses what you do more than an improviser somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And to be both the effect and the improviser, that is very difficult for a human to do. And to expect that from a primitive machine is, that's pushing it.
But then now I guess you performed with something developed by someone else. Stefania, Anna, you also have experience of performing with code and, AI that you have developed also yourself. I guess, have you felt being in the moment with your systems somehow?
Well, I would like to say something from the audience perspective, actually, because now we heard from the musician's perspective, and from the audience perspective, I see that, there was this question about where was the machine and where was the audience, or where there was the performer. And I think that was detectable, but I think it was like the machine was really enriching. Maybe we didn't feel like an improviser. I mean, I'm horrible at improvising. I can just play a score, so I cannot say how it is to be a good musician that can improvise. But I think that the machine part really enriched the experience and made it really pleasant. So maybe for you guys, it's not like playing with a body. Also, I mean, you don't know the computer. So you don't, I think it's really something, it has really lots of potential, and it was quite an amazing experience, I would like to say. And maybe Anna would like, because Anna actually performs, because I just make software, I don't perform.
But, yeah, I totally agree with you, Stefania, that I felt like the the two were great, and the cooperation between both were like, they were complementing very well. So I also agree that it felt like a rich performance. And then, so back to, the performing with an AI, in my case, I was just, from these conversations thinking, usually you need to divide when you're developing versus when you're performing, but it's when you're performing with the AI that it's really, it's a joy in a way. You need to be also a little bit patient, I guess, and think about it kindly, because it's a developing tool, but it's also nice, right? When there is a performance mode and you can try the tool and start seeing, the potential. But I guess it's early days as well, but there's future.
Yeah, and perhaps to have the final word go to Nanette, and because you have been talking about this as kind of a baby AI and kind of beginning improviser. Can we imagine getting to a point where these machines would have kind of really get empathic in a way, and also really have an agency, kind of, so that you would really feel that this is another really agent that you can perform with?
You're asking me?
Yes. The philosopher.
Yeah. You know, certainly everything's possible, and I tend to think more in opportunities than in problems. And we can learn so much from encountering the robotic world. If you think about Blade Runner and the way in which the replicants, that we tend to empathize with them towards the end even more, realizing that they seem more human than some of us might actually be. So sometimes that environment can be surprisingly emphatic, or empathetic, sorry. When we talked about problems and sort of opportunities before, I thought I would just chip in that one big sort of aesthetic question attached to music has always been, you know, what is music? So what happens with this environment is there's sort of a challenge, because we think that creativity might be a bit random sometimes. So who's composing, who's playing, you know, do we even care who composes, and who cares if we listen? So there's all sorts of big questions attached to the biggest aesthetic questions of what is music. But we do know from aesthetic discussions that the question what is music really means what counts as music. So one aesthetic implication of all of this might be that such technologies, and this is where I think about opportunities, that such technologies help us change our value systems, right? Or at least they challenge these stubborn legacies really, really well. So no, I thank you for a wonderful performance, and no, it's really a great experience.
Thank you. I think we'll end the panel discussion there. Thanks a lot to the panel for your insights. Christian Winther, Dag Erik Knedal Andersen, Stefania Serafin, Anna Chambaud, and Nanette Nilsen. And that concludes the panel session. And then I guess we turn around and look there, and we get to the final session of today's performance, or MusicLab.
So, yeah, thank you all for tagging along and yeah, being interested in this. This was a great panel discussion, and thank you to the people who participated. And now is the last leg of this event, which is data jockeying, which Alexander explained briefly earlier. It's a component of MusicLab where we take some of the data that has been collected and then play with it, like some live hacking. And this is the data that was collected when the musicians were improvising with CAVI. And it's ECG data from their chests, right? And we have Dong-Ho Daniel Kwak, who is going to show us a little bit of how it worked. Are you ready, Daniel? Dong-Ho?
Well, he's setting up, but just I can explain then the idea of this, why we kind of invented this concept of data jockeying, is that during some of our previous sessions where we recorded during performances, people would often afterwards come up and say, hey, what did you find, what did you see, what are you doing, etc. So then when we started developing the MusicLab concept, we thought about, well, hey, why don't we actually just show and tell what we're actually doing? By really exposing this, how we work as researchers. So, well, of course, we don't have time to show and tell absolutely everything, but what Dong-Ho is going to do now is to then take the data that was recorded during the performance and then put it into a Jupyter notebook that he's setting up now, using also a programming language called Python for doing some data wrangling, you could say, taking in the data, massaging it in different ways, plotting it, etc. So it's possible to see a little bit of how we work as researchers. Of course, this is going to be quick. He has some pre-made things, so he can do it. And when we work on this for making publications, etc., it usually takes a lot more time. But still, it's something about showing some of the main concepts of how we're approaching the data analysis of these type of things. So, let's see, are we getting ready?
It worked before, but... I'll change the connection.
Yeah, so while they are working on getting connected, I wanted to say that MusicLab has been going on for a few years now, and we are continuing to have events So if you like our format, then make sure to follow Ritmo on social media and also the University Library, where we share things. And you can also visit the webpage where everything is published openly. So it's an open science project. You can get access to all the data from all the different music labs. And the music, like the part of the music that we are allowed to share, is also viewable on YouTube. And if you don't find it there, then just get in touch with, for instance, Alexander, email him and ask for access. So everything is open, and that's kind of how we like to make MusicLab as a citizen science, open science thing. So how is it going there?
Getting there.
Yeah. You should have something nice to drink, and yeah, I will do some talking like we are on in a nice
Okay. Always with this technical things. Yeah. Thank you, Sala. There we go. I hope everyone can see the screen and the stream also. I'll get right to it. My name is Dongo, and I'm a PhD candidate here at RIPMO. And also thank you very much for those who are staying for this short data joking session. I guess everyone might be tired a little bit, so I'll try and keep it a bit brief and simple, and talk generally through the session. And I think I'll try and touch briefly on how these data can be actually not as simple as it seems to when we are trying to work with these. So let's see if I can do this. Yeah. So yeah, so I didn't have a lot of time to work with this, but hopefully it works. Let's see. So these biodata tend to be very noisy, and that can be due to many different reasons. And we always have to compensate for that, and spend quite a bit of time on actually just filtering out these noise and clearing up the data so it becomes more useful for analysis and for research purposes. So there are many solutions for that, but using text-based programming like this Python can help a lot since they are readily available packages with very small modifications that can be quite helpful and installed quite easily on your PC. So I guess if I can get to pre-process. So here as you can see, I've loaded up the data, and I think I'll be working more with, although I have ECG and the breathing data here, I think I'll probably have time only for the ECG data here. In terms of pre-processing, so as I mentioned, these data tends to be very noisy, so that can be due to things like baseline drift due to other muscle activities such as breathing that affects the ECG data recordings, and also it could actually be other electrical noises, and also it could be the poor contact between the instrument measurement instrument and the experimental subjects. So in this case, were the performers. So this is just an example of what baseline drift could be. As you can see, this is fluctuating quite a bit. And then also the electrical noise is typically indicated by this kind of thickness difference. And then the last one is a very typical example of when there's a very poor contact between the measurements and instruments. So here I got the data loaded up. Yep. Fine. Yeah, so I've got all the data. So here I'm applying some filters to compensate for these kind of noises. And let's see our raw data first. Here I plotted the ECG raw data from our performance. And as you can see, there's a lot of fluctuations and doesn't actually look like ECG, the typical ECG data that we're familiar with. But I guess if you kind of zoom into it, you'll see, so this is a typical baseline drift. You'll see some peaks here and there, which is indication that there was ECG data that was recorded. And then typically, I'm speculating, but in the beginning, the big amplitude differences in the beginning and the end of it is probably when the sensors were put on subjects and put off again. And I think in the middle, it was probably when they had to change the sensors between the two subjects, which was the guitarist and then the drummer. So then I had to filter this, and if I can plot this, and this is when the data is more or less cleared up, and you can see it became much more stable. So here there's nothing there. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So here you can see the typical signal that's processing, but there are also some, as I see, filtered more. But but this is quite a large set of data. So then we typically have to then try and find where the critical section of the data is. And fortunately, during the performance, we had some markers, so I know when the performance started and stopped. So let's see if I can do that. So this was right in the middle of the performance, and I was a bit surprised to see this, that as soon as the performers, I think this was the guitarist, the first performer, started to play, things, with just a glimpse of it, I think things became very stable. I wonder that's from, when you start playing, you start focusing more, and perhaps your physiological system also, the signals also kind of became stable as well. And it's kind of known that there's always a interaction between many different systems of the physiology, so that could be the reason. And I think it might be interesting to scan through this data a little bit just to give some examples. See, just go to random. So here, yeah, so that's a typical, I think this is when the electrodes kind of, the contact wasn't so good, probably due to the movement when of the performer, and the performer was playing. And let's see, where's this one? Oh yeah, I think that this was the beginning of the performance when the sensors were put on. Here you see more stable. So and so forth. So they are. So we typically spend a lot of time just finding the right place and then also filtering this kind of data, which can be quite time-consuming. But then in the end, we hope we have something interesting and fruitful. We can just go on a little bit. And then the next important things with the ECG data would be, which is very typical of it, is the peak detection. So when we want to quantify this, one of the easiest way to mark this signal is to find the very peak of the signals, which is R to R detection, so-called. So then through this kind of process, then we can, luckily I don't have to do it, the program automatically does it for me. So then I don't have time to actually quantify everything, but then as you can see that we have now, the program has now detected the spots of where the peaks are, and then we can start measuring the differences between the peaks and see if there was any heart rate variability and so forth. Because heart rate variability is a physiological phenomenon, as you guys know, and this varies in time. These intervals are quite interesting because when you look at them, they look very stable, but when you look at the micro level, they actually vary. They vary quite a lot, and there have been some studies, for example, that reports that this kind of intervals are related to behavior activity. So in this case, maybe it's affected by the performance, and perhaps during the performance when they start interacting with the AI. That sort of things we are interested in. So up to there, yeah. So this I don't have to quantify this, but this is just an example to see how these rates could be varied, and they are very close to one another. So yeah. So. Fortunately, I don't have time for this, but the breathing data could have been also interesting because to make the relations between cardiovascular system and the respiratory system is always something that we're also interested in, and cardiorespiratory coupling is something that could be quite interesting in this case. So this is just an example, but yeah. So the cardiorespiratory coupling is a term that describes the influence of the respiration on the heart rate and blood pressure, and vice versa, actually. So that's quite interesting also. So yeah, that's about what I've prepared. Oh, that was interesting enough.
Great. Thank you, Dong Ho, for going through some of the types of things of analysis that we are doing with this type of data. So what you just saw now was the data from ECG, which is measuring the heart, and also the respiration, the belt that Dong Ho didn't really have time to look at in this case. We also have measurement of the motion of the performance, and of course we have video as well, so, and audio. So these type of things we typically try to analyze, and also to see how we can analyze these things together, because often these signals are analyzed separately. And one of the things that we are dealing with here at Ritmo is to try to also see how we can do kind of true multimodal type of analysis, where it's possible to also look at these signals together. And the main point of all of this is to try to understand what's actually going on in the bodies, or performers in this case, and sometimes in other cases the audience, and to try to see if there are any relationships between the music being played and the various types of motion and physiological signals of the bodies of both the performers and the perceivers.
Great. So when DJ Dong Ho actually said that the ECG signals or the heart rate became more stable when they started to play, is that right? What does that mean?
Well, that's a good question, and I guess that's what we really need to dig into now. So we don't really know, and that's why we're doing this, is to really try to see what's happening in the performance context. And now we have available different types of methods for capturing this from performers, and we have been doing these type of tests in the lab before. Now the thing that we are doing now is that we're trying to go outside of the lab, because a lab is a very it's an artificial environment where it doesn't really feel like being on a stage. So one of the things about MusicLab is that we're really trying to capture music performances in a real life setting, in a real world scenario, and ideally also with an audience, and trying to then understand what's going on. So that's one of the points of doing this type of research.
So when we're back from this Corona time, then people can come to live MusicLab, and they can also have their own physiological data measured if they want to. So,
absolutely.
Which is very nice as audience.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for now. You have the stream is there. We'll also make data available. If you want to do your own data jockeying of this, you can find scripts and data on the webpage eventually. And well,
we might have to take the stream down, but because of copyright issues, but then you can just, as I said earlier, just email one of us and ask for a link to watch it. We'll be very happy to share that with you. And we also owe a big thank you to the ones of you who volunteered to give off your data and give your feedback. Without you, great research wouldn't be possible. Okay, so thank you so much.